Thanks for joining us today. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Lee Ji-yoon. We have a lot coming up on today's edition of Business Daily, so let's get started with the day's highlights. China's devaluation of the yuan spurs worries among investors while jolting global stock markets. Some Koreans will get an extra day off this week with a special holiday, but experts are weighing the benefits it will have on the local economy. We saw some major news come out of China on this Wednesday as the country devalued its currency again after doing so just a day before for the first time in more than 2 decades. Now, this move rattled financial markets around the world as investors headed for safer assets on concerns about a slowdown in the world's second largest economy. Our Song Ji-sun reports.
China pushed down the value of its currency for a second day, setting another 1.6% lower on Wednesday, after lowering it 1.86% the day before. Tuesday's devaluation was the biggest one-day fall since a massive devaluation in 1994, when China aligned its official and market rates. The devaluations follow weakened data that showed China's exports tumbled 8% last month, hit by weaker demand from Europe, the US, and Japan, and that producer prices had entered a fourth year of deflation. The action sent stock markets across the globe spinning, with prices of raw materials and crude oil also dropping sharply. Investors appeared worried that the decision is a sign of Beijing's own growing concern about its sliding economic growth rate and its ability to bolster growth. Demand for safer assets pushed down bond yields in the US and Europe. Beijing's action also weighs heavy on the US Fed and could force it to delay a rate hike previously expected in the second half of the year. For China, the benefits are clear. A cheaper yuan will boost exports by making them less expensive in overseas markets.
I think the present situation won't have a clear impact on the areas of trade and investment. But my personal feeling is that, as in the past, the latest information today that the renminbi has gone down and the adjustment of it, especially downwards, will have a stimulating effect on exports.
And as China is Korea's biggest trading and export partner, stronger demand and growth in Beijing will also benefit Seoul in the long run. Korea's Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan said the government is closely monitoring the foreign exchange market, and the latest devaluation may have positive effects on outbound shipments, as Seoul mostly exports intermediary goods to China, and Beijing ships them out after final production. Song Ji-sun, Business Daily.
And coming out of that story, let's check on how the markets fared here in Seoul today. Seoul shares dropped on Wednesday as investors try to avoid risky assets with growing concerns over China's second devaluation of its currency. At the closing bell, the benchmark Kospi was down 0.56%, finishing the day at 1975.47, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq also lost 2.06% to end at 717.2. On the foreign exchange counter, the Korean won tumbled to a near 4-year low against the greenback, closing at 1,190.8 won. Meanwhile, Korea's Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan says that the year 2015 is quote-unquote the golden time to implement structural reforms and promised that the government will take measures to reform the labor market within year-end. The minister said the need for reforms transcends political boundaries as they are directly related to creating jobs for young people. As for carrying out reforms in the financial sector, he said the government will help to make local banks more competitive and revamp the country's stock exchange. The minister added that Seoul plans to use the large-scale event Korea Grand Sale to draw in more foreign shoppers during the month of August and ahead of its original date. The event kicks off this Friday and runs through October 31st. Bank-issued household loans have surged by $6 billion in July from the month before, the third largest sum since data was first run in 2008. That brings the total outstanding balance over the 600 trillion won mark for the first time, or roughly $509 billion. The Bank of Korea attributed the rise to a dynamic housing market as most were mortgage loans. The number of apartment transactions in Seoul nearly tripled the July average from 2006 to 2014, reaching 12,100 units. Borrowing costs are at some of the lowest seen in recent years after the central bank cut its key interest rate to 1.5%. Korea's job market added around 326,000 new jobs on year in July. Statistics Korea said Wednesday that despite the recent MERS outbreak, it's the third straight month that more than 300,000 people were newly employed. This is especially attributed to an on-year addition of 170,000 jobs in the manufacturing sector. Meanwhile, hiring in the agro-fishery, finance, and service sectors was weak. The unemployment rate in July stood at 3.7%, slightly down from the month before. But considering that it's still higher than last year, the agency says it's too early to tell whether the economy has recovered from the effects of the MERS outbreak. Nearly 4 out of 10 Koreans believe that the country's rural development project, or the 새마을 movement, helped Korea's economy the most when it comes to how much progress was made. Many also think that Korea is now playing the role of bridging developed and developing economies. For more, here's our Son Jung-in.
The Federation of Korean Industries conducted a poll on 800 adults ahead of this week's National Liberation Day. The survey showed that 39% of the respondents viewed the 새마을 movement, an agricultural and rural reform drive in the 1970s and 80s, as the main reason Korea's economy expanded so rapidly. 33% chose Korea's 5-year economic development plans, followed by the Seoul Summer Olympics in 1988 and the 2002 FIFA World Cup. As for the force that drove Korea's growth, 59% chose Koreans' strong determination for a better life, followed by talented individuals with high levels of education and political leadership and systematic governmental policy. Half of the respondents said the Asian financial crisis in 1997 was the worst national economic crisis. Most people perceived Korea as semi-developed or in the upper middle level of world economies. A higher number of people wanted Korea to be richer, more than those who wanted the country to be a more mature democracy. According to the poll, Koreans think creating more jobs for young people and protecting those struggling to make ends meet are the most important tasks currently facing Asia's fourth largest economy. Son Jung-in, Business Daily.
Some Koreans will have their working days cut short this week thanks to the recently designated special holiday this Friday. The move is in line with the government's efforts to boost domestic spending hit by the MERS outbreak and also to mark the country's 70th National Liberation Day, which falls on Saturday, August 15th. And the government is hoping that the long weekend will give the economy a lift. To tell us more about this, our Shin Se-min joins us in the studio. Hello, Se-min.
Hi to you.
So I hear that this temporary holiday is expected to produce over $1 billion worth of economic benefits.
That's right, Ji, and the government expects this one holiday will give at least $1.1 billion worth of economic effects. But given that calculation is based on the assumption that half the population goes on a break and to tell that all government workers will get their day off, but that seems to be not the case for many others.
It's an unexpected day off. This coming Friday, August 14th, has officially been declared a special public holiday. Korea's finance minister Choi Kyung-hwan said earlier this month that the extra day off will generate some $1.1 billion for the domestic economy, creating a quote-unquote halo effect stemming from additional spending by the public. The figure he cited traces back to data compiled by Hyundai Research Institute. The calculation comes from the assumption that on average, one person would spend $68 per day. Multiply that by 25 million Koreans, half the total population, and it adds up to 1.3 trillion won, or $1.1 billion worth of spending. But some have questioned the validity of this report as people point out they weren't given enough time to plan ahead for the extended weekend.
It was on such short notice, and when I went online to try to make reservations for accommodation, things were pricier than I had thought.
I already went on vacation with my kids, so I don't think I'll plan another.
Others say the extra holiday doesn't change anything for them.
It's irrelevant to many students, including myself. I still have to go to private academies to study.
I can't even think of going on holiday since I'll be still looking for potential job opportunities.
And then there are those who say they don't actually get the day off.
My husband still has to go to work. I guess I'll be going to the playground with my boys.
For people like me who work in construction, you don't really get holidays. If we have a project going on, we work regardless.
For various reasons, many Koreans have been unable to set up grand vacation plans. This is despite various measures the government unveiled that are aimed at encouraging local tourism, including offering free toll on all expressways and special discounts on train tickets for those under the age of 28. The government has also pulled forward the Korea Grand Sale, a special discount offered to foreign tourists across a large number of retailers. The event was originally scheduled for later in the year, but it's now set to begin on the 14th as well. For those in the service industry, all opportunities for more spending are welcome.
The more holidays there are, the better it is for vendors like us, because more shoppers might come visit traditional markets.
But critics point out the extra holiday will not be all that effective, as individual firms get to decide whether to take the day off or not. Large conglomerates like Samsung Group, Hyundai Motor, LG, and Tucson Group have decided to give their employees the long weekend off. But workers at small and mid-sized firms and those in the manufacturing industry who must meet production deadlines will most likely work on Friday.
It would have had much greater of an impact had the government decided on the temporary holiday much earlier. It would have allowed people to plan their vacations ahead of time.
With no clear statistics on how many Koreans will actually be granted a day off on the 14th, it remains hard to know whether it will actually lead to a spending blip or give the economy a leg up.
All right, Sam, and then how much of an impact will this extended holiday or weekend actually have? I mean, like you mentioned, 10 days notice is pretty short.
That's why there are concerns that this special holiday is highly impractical. I mean, just looking at the Korea Grand Sale alone, the government pushed it a couple months ahead of time, just 10 days ahead of its planned event. So giving that to foreigners to make their travel plans is such a short notice.
Right, and 10 days is a pretty short period of time if you want to go abroad. And also, I remember there was a similar debate some time ago about this, about the substitute holidays.
That's right. Back in 2013, the government introduced a thing called a substitute holiday to give workers a day or days off if their public holiday falls on the weekend. But that plan was implemented only to a certain extent to cover Lunar New Year's and Chuseok, Korea's Thanksgiving. That's one of the reasons was because they limited the number of days off because of a data published by Korea Employers Federation showing that the manufacturing industry would be losing an estimate of over $8.2 billion per day.
Well, then, so that will be the same case this year as well, because that would just outweigh the benefits that government suggested.
Well, it's not quite the same economic conditions since 2013. Things have changed. For one, demand has fallen while the supply hasn't. So the larger firm still has stocked up in their inventory. So the data was based on extreme circumstances under which all manufacturers would be put to full stop. So the figure does take things to extreme.
So for manufacturers, the losses won't be that great.
Probably not, but it does go to show how much debate there is to show whether this public holiday, a special holiday, will be effective enough to boost domestic economy.
All right, I guess we'll have to see if this extra day off will actually get more people to go out and spend more, because personally, I have to work on that day and you have to work on that day too.
That's right.
All right, thank you so much for coming in today.
You bet.
And that brings us to the end. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back with more fun and in-depth business stories tomorrow at the same time, same place. Thanks for watching and see you soon.